Okay, it looks like we are live and ready to go. So first we're going to start with LESD Connection, Digital Learning Academy. I'm not sure who's presenting. Laura Combs, maybe Gina, I'm not sure.
Hi, President Clymer and board members. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I am live to you from Yellowstone, so I just came off the mountain. So I have the honor of presenting a new idea for our district that was developed out of need with what's been happening with the coronavirus and just giving our parents the opportunity to have options when it comes to the education of their children. So this presentation is an overview of what we kind of came up with as a committee. Go ahead, Stevie, go to the next slide. So the purpose of the Digital Learning Academy is that we know that parents have a choice when it comes to their educating their children, and have voiced a need for both an in-person and a distance learning option. And we would like to provide parents with a full spectrum of choices when it comes to making those education decisions for their family. So the four goals for the LESD Distance Learning Academy would be to provide an additional resource and programming setting to further meet individual needs of all of our learners, and to monitor the fidelity of the online learning program through effective professional learning, data analysis, and feedback from staff, students, and parents. The second goal is to ensure all students have access to rigorous and relevant learning opportunities. Online classes are directly aligned to our district adopted curriculum to ensure this rigorous opportunity and to guarantee, have a guaranteed and viable curriculum for all students. The third goal is to provide a high quality curricular program that promote continuous growth to close the achievement gap and ensure proficiency for the current school year and beyond. And then the last goal is to provide students with supports that promote social emotional well-being and create a strong and connected classroom family. So those are really kind of wordy, but basically what we're saying is we want to give kids and families an option of an online full-time school with our teachers, our curriculum, our standards of rigor, and with what we already know works for creating those strong classroom communities, but in an online setting as well. So basically that's what those four mean. So here's what we did. We put together a broad spectrum of people to think about what those considerations would be to create this. And so you can see we had teachers, we had specialists, we had people from special education and administrators as well. We're on an incredibly short timeline. This happened in about a week when we kind of started thinking about what this might look like to putting the draft together. Jason is helping to write the application that has to go to the Board of Education. So today we are doing the draft of the Digital Learning Academy and the program guidelines, along with, you have a copy of what the Arizona online instruction application would look like when we submit it. And that deadline is the 1st of July. Upon approval, we get sort of a provisional, and then we can begin implementing. We're good. So what that would look like is it is a full-time virtual teaching and learning school. It's live teacher-led instruction. Of course, we would also have recordings for students who view them later as well, along with asynchronous learning, meaning sometimes it's me live with my students, and then I assign some assignments that would be self-paced and self-move through. This model can support all grades K through 8. They would be actually enrolled in this school. So it's like school 17 basically, as opposed to being enrolled in one of our physical schools. And because we kind of have to staff it almost like a school, we are asking that parents commit to a full year. So the idea behind this is that it's not a drop in and out kind of a thing. Now, of course, there's always going to be circumstances that would require that, but we're asking parents to commit that this is the school they're enrolling in. It would be 5 days a week of instruction using best practices for online learning. And we know that that is not sitting on the computer all day. So the schedule would use those best practices as well. We would include social emotional learning, interventions, and additional support for students. The content is designed and delivered by our own teachers, and it's from our own adopted curriculum. It would include live teacher-led instruction along with that self-paced. We would also have opportunities for small group instruction, one-on-one support, and students that have accommodations, such as special education or EL, would also receive those services as well. We would continue to use our conscious discipline to create those strong and connected classroom communities. So students would be assigned a homeroom teacher, and we would use one of our days to really have those classroom meetings and some of those community building type things for our students. Specials and electives would be available to students on demand, meaning they can choose to participate in them online or not. It would really depend on what the family needs. We would also provide enrichment and extension activities for all students, but also really making sure that we gear it towards our gifted and high achieving, higher students that are in that gifted type range as well. And then what we would ask from parents is that they do provide a internet connection, and we do have a recommendation of a speed of 25 megabytes per second. And then based on need, we would be able to provide some of the devices as well. All right. So our next steps is we have to approve the goals for this, for the first year, and the Arizona Online Instruction Plan. We have to submit that by the 1st. Then we'll of course wait to see if our plan is accepted. Then we need to create a communication plan, providing our parents with an overview, and just thinking off the top of my head, kind of doing a parent presentation and an overview with questions and answers. Registration plans, staffing, and training for our staff, students, and parents. And at this time, Jason and I are available for questions that you might have about this and the plan, the AOI that we are proposing to submit.
Hi all, I'm Jason. Nice to meet you.
Hi, Jason. Thank you so much, you guys, for putting this together. I know that, Laura, as you mentioned, we've had, 3 seconds to get our life together and plan for a 17th school, which, we just opened one last year. We know how difficult that can be, whether, brick and mortar or online. Education content is education content, and we're dedicated to providing the best that we possibly can. So understanding that you guys have done this in a very short period of time. So thank you very much. Kudos to you and the entire team that put this together. I do have some questions on the AOI itself, really just about the program, but I just found them in the application that you sent. So Laura and or Jason, whichever one has the answer to the question, just let me know. I'm not sure exactly what page it's on, but underneath section number 2, there is a box entitled Implementation. And at the very bottom of that box, it says, thoughtful and strategic planning coupled with intentional refinements to the program will be implemented in the first year. Totally makes sense. Litchfield's connection vision is to develop a fully accredited online program in the future. So I just want to really understand what that means. That means this school is not accredited, or I just want to make sure I understand we're still getting our same curriculum. There's no difference if you go into the classroom or here. So I just want to make sure I understand what that means exactly.
It would be fully accredited under the state of Arizona.
Okay.
There is some national standards that we would want to look forward to be in that, that top echelon of what an online academy would really look like. But in that first year, when I was looking at those national standards, there was just no way that we would be able to start putting those into place just yet. But over the year, those are something we would want to do. And Jason, correct me if I'm wrong, but along with the AOI, initially you're just provisionally accepted into having an online. And so there's a whole demonstration. And at the end of the year, you have to show that you've done what you said you did. Is that right, Jason?
Yes, as you're looking at the end of it, they revisit everything at the end of that first year to make sure they want to continue on with you doing this plan. So I think we're kind of entering into a whole new world with this now, because this AOI thing was something they probably didn't see a whole lot of people filling out on a regular basis, and now it's kind of like almost every district, I would imagine, is at least thinking about something. So yeah. It is revisited.
And mostly it was high school. Very few.
Do you want me to add into that portion that, clarify that what you mean is to get national accreditations? Does that sound good, Laura? In the document itself, that when you say that, when we said Litchfield Connections vision is to develop a fully accredited online program in the future, maybe a specific example of what we would seek. Does that sound good to you? Could we look that up and insert that into the application, or?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how that application should be written if we needed to say nationally accredited. I'm sure the people that you're giving this to understand that process, better than I do. I was just, as a layperson, just wanting to understand I know we take our, curriculum and our educational content that we're providing very seriously. So I just wanted to make sure that parents understood that we are still providing the exact same level of education with the same Litchfield staff and the same Litchfield standards online as they would get in school. I love the fact that, in a year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever those sort of strategic goals are as we move forward, that we would become nationally certified. That's fantastic. I think, right now I agree that we are, starting under the gun, and we need to be really realistic about, our focus should be right now on getting the best program up and running and ready for our students in August, and training our staff and providing the correct technology, all the things that you just mentioned. Those are the things that we should be focused on right now. National accreditation, if we get that in year 2 or year 3, I still think we're light years ahead of where we thought we'd be even 2 months ago. So yeah, that's not a major concern for me right now. But 2 other quick questions, and then I'll open it up to the rest of the board. You did mention some enrichment, gifted options, things like that. I'm assuming that just based on, numbers and all of that, we're not going to have traditional honors program or things like that in our middle school. So how will that work? And Jody, you can answer this also, with class sizes and how we combine those classes together. Will there be any combination of grades, overlapping grades, or how will that work? Like, what will the classroom look like of those children, since they may all be at different levels, or will there be sort of clustering? How, in the normal classroom, that's kind of how it works, but how does it work here?
So President Clymer, when we put together this plan, that was a big piece of it, is what is the just the classroom piece look like, and then what's the class size as well. And so doing some research, we discovered that online classes can usually be 25% over what your traditional cap in the classroom would be. So if the cap is 27, it would be 25% over that. And so that's kind of when we wrote out our very detailed plan, that's where we're putting the class sizes at, is whatever our current class load is, we're going to go 25% over that. Now, as far as will it be grade bands or individual classes, that's really going to depend on enrollment. We discussed, at the elementary level, the K-5, and really we may even go into K-6. So sixth grade would be more of a self-contained type setting, as opposed to how it is, in the traditional middle schools that we have. So it would be a grade band of like K1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, depending on how many students are enrolled. It may have to be that it's individual class. But with middle school, what we're looking at for 7th and 8th grade is teachers individually teaching that one core content. So whatever their class size load, which, in the middle school, it's like 110, 20, something like that. They can go over that, but they would, the times would be staggered. So even though you're in 7th grade ELA, you might be in the morning session as opposed to the afternoon session. So we would have to, it's going to come down to enrollment and then structuring it that way.
Right. Understood. Thank you. Any other questions, comments, Melissa?
I could add a little bit to what she said as well.
So first, thank you guys for doing this. I was very much concerned about us having options going forward, seeing the numbers of families that are saying that they are not ready to send their kids back. I was freaking out about us losing our students if we didn't have this option. So I really appreciate that we got this put together so quickly, and that it was done so well, but I would expect nothing less than for our districts to do that. I did want to know if we've looked at what we're thinking for costs for doing this.
So I'll pipe in for a second on the cost, because we're looking at the majority of the cost coming for staffing, but trying to balance those numbers of pulling kids out of the classroom, and then because they want to do online, and then that being able to surplus a teacher, and hopefully a teacher that really didn't feel comfortable going back into the physical setting and wanted to teach online. So, our hope is that it will kind of balance out. It may be additional staffing, an additional staffing cost, but some of the things we don't know for sure until enrollment. We will be spending about, is it $50,000, Wendy, on the Nearpod platform for the teachers to use online, which would be for something accessible for all of our teachers. So if we do have a hybrid, or we have another distance learning program that is not the online academy that you're enrolled in, that would be available for all teachers too. So we know right out of the gate, we're looking at $50,000 to spend. And then we are using computers that we currently have to hand out. We may end up having to order more computers. And then as far as staffing, possibly an instructional coach to oversee the teachers for that. That might be additional staffing, but we're hoping that the teachers can come from within.
And with Nearpod, we're hoping to use the CARES Act funding as well. So that is a nice addition.
Yes, thank you.
So I'm sorry, I had a question on that same vein. Does the state fund the same if a child's in a classroom versus online? Like, what's the difference there?
The state does not, if it's the AOI. So we're pursuing the AOI, but we're also going to, in the meantime, while we're waiting for the framework, consider the framework, waiting for the approval, consider the framework of the AOI. So if it's an AOI and they're enrolled in that, in their full-time, it's 95% of what we would typically get for that student. So it's not full average daily membership. But the other thing too is we're kind of waiting on the governor to say what the flexibility is going to be with distance learning instruction. So we may be able to implement this framework and run this program, but not necessarily as an AOI if they're going to give us the flexibility. So obviously we would take the route that gets the most money for the district without compromising the integrity of the program.
Okay, my next question is, do we have an idea of the number of students that we can accommodate in this program?
Again, it will depend on enrollment. Are we pulling from our own students, or are we pulling some from other districts as well or even students that are in our district that may have been going to an online school and now want to come back because it's part of their district. So it really is going to depend on enrollment. Bare bones, let's just say we had enough enrollment for an individual grade per class, so one class per grade in K5, and then or K6, and then 150 7th grade and 150 8th grade. We're looking at, doing quick math in my head, because we're saying about 30 for kinder, 35 for first and second, and 40 for 4th, 5th, and 6th. So rough estimate, 400 students. No, more than that, 450. I'm gonna have to get my calculator. 30, 70.
But to that point, the accommodation factor, right? I mean, is this going to be limited enrollment? Or that's what you're saying, right? I mean, like, is it expandable if we have 1,000 students that potentially register in July? Or is it going to be a cutoff? We can only accommodate based on, current staffing models or whatever. Do we have that, or do we know what that cutoff might look like?
Can I chime in? So I think what we're going to have to look at is kind of like what all the districts are doing right now is we've got to look at the interest. So we're going to have to look at interest, and then we're going to have to look at what our staffing is like, because we have to marry the two right now. So we're not going to have maybe as much flexibility as we would like, because then could determine like what we have to do with staff, right? Or what flexibility and what options. Like if we have most of the kids that want to go online and all of our teachers want to stay in a brick and mortar, that's going to be an issue. So that's where I think what our next steps are going to be, is that we're going to have to get people to commit in some way to what program they're liking once we decide what the options are, so that then we can then open it up to post like positions to see what teachers are interested in, and definitely give priority to the teachers who have special circumstances that may need to opt for an online process. So that's kind of where we're at right now. So it is hard, and it's and you got to be like Gumby, almost as flexible as you possibly can, because tomorrow we may have additional information that could change what options we can offer and those types of things too.
And I think the more I buried myself in writing this AOI, I mean, I think we'll be subject to how many kids want to go online. Otherwise we lose them. Mm-hmm. So once you really think of the numbers that way, if we get, 2,000, we're not going to, but I think we'll have to figure it out, because otherwise we lose them.
Right.
I have some questions, if I may. So I understand the need for options given our present day scenario. Where does this fit? Because I don't think 6 months ago, well, I know 6 months ago we weren't talking about this. So where does this fit into the long-term strategic plan? And what happens when COVID is over if this program loses its luster because it's really filling a temporary need that we have. So if the governor comes back, I understand the need to do the application at this point because we're not sure what's going to happen. And we have a deadline there for July 1st. Completely support that. I just want to know how, other than financially, this fits into our strategic plan.
Kim, can I say,
So I feel like this fits into that innovation component and piece. And this is something that we've talked about for many years, especially for our alt ed program and being able to meet our needs in our alt ed program, as well as trying to capture a lot of our children that are already homeschooled that we could actually bring back. So it was something that we had been kind of toying with and talking about, but had never kind of jumped off because it was a pretty tedious process, a year-long process that we now did in just a couple weeks. So we're actually excited because it kind of forced us to kind of jump in with both feet and give us this year to really work out the kinks and work out the bugs, because I think it is definitely an option that could be, especially even in this setting of who knows what our setting will be like in the future too, with the environment, that gives options to our families.
Yeah, I
So
would.
what
I'm going to chime in.
Okay,
hold
go
on.
ahead.
I'm going to
Go
say
ahead.
that because I knew that Kim was going to ask. What's the goal here? What is the overall objective, right? Where are we going with this? Like, is this a 1 year and done? Is this a 5-year program, right? We didn't think about this 5 minutes ago and now all of a sudden we're having to react. So innovation, absolutely, we have to innovate based on our current situation. I looked at it as, and it fell in a couple different pillars because I was sort of thinking the same thing. How do we create a program and spend money on a program and really put a lot of resources to a program that could potentially be temporary? It may not be. This may be the wave of the future, and we always have 15% of our district going this way. And to Jason's point, we invite other students that we may have lost, right, for some other reason because they needed to be here, and we may gain students, which is awesome. When I looked at it under our pillars for student success, ensuring an ongoing district-wide student-centered focus, right? I mean, I think giving our students and families for that matter, right? Like the options that they need to feel comfortable coming, I think that absolutely fits within that, and hoping that by providing them that safety and comfort, that it will hopefully improve their academic success, right? Overall. Between people and service, they're basically very similar in the goals, and we're providing an environment where all students, staff, and families feel emotionally and physically safe. I think we've heard a lot even this evening about the effects of COVID and all the school closures and all that we're going through, right, as a staff, and all of this about really working to reopen, and some families choosing not to do that, and providing a safe and healthy alternative that again fits financially within our strategic plan, because I think we can't stray too far from that, especially if we do think that it has a potential of being temporary, and by temporary I mean less than 5 years. But I think when I look at those overall, I'm comfortable doing this for a 1 to 3 year time period and seeing how it goes, and whether we need to make modifications based on the pillars and the goals that we have set. I still feel like that fits, as long as financially we can make this feasible, right, in staffing. So.
That becomes the issue, as we've seen with, for example, 6th grade Trad-a-CAD, where it's the new shiny thing and everyone wants that. And then over time, we've been hesitant to adapt to the reality, which is a decrease in demand for that. So, I think I would encourage everyone, to keep the flexibility. Obviously, to Jody's point, or Superintendent's point, we don't know what the interest level is going to be realistically. Again, I completely support putting in the application and developing this. My other concern about equity, which is always on my mind, is that students who have internet connection and have greater availability to technology will be more comfortable to jump on this versus students who might not have that at home. So I would like to explore whatever options we could provide to be able to help those students that might not have that, who do still want to feel safe. But, you know, if you're a parent and you're saying, I really would like to keep my child home, but I don't have Wi-Fi at home. I don't have internet at home, you know, so I am forced to send my child to school, to a school location. I think we need to come up with some sort of variety or options for all students, not just those who have the accommodations that we hope they have, so that it makes it easy and inexpensive for us.
We are still exploring. T-Mobile has a program that allows us to provide students with a device and unlimited data that would allow for that. We're still exploring that. And within our parent communication plan, we've also considered, Cox has a $10 a month internet plan for students in need. So we will be handing that information out as well to provide that low cost internet for families. That's always on my mind as well, especially coming as a Title I principal. Always.
And on the survey, we did collect information from parents. If you don't have internet and you would like assistance in finding, you know, how to get either free or reasonable, and many parents left their names and their phone numbers for devices and for assistance with internet connection. So we'll be following up with all of those people that did complete the survey, which isn't everyone that we need to contact, but it's definitely a start.
I have one last question, if I may. So just to reiterate Danielle's point earlier, when we start when this gets approved, which hopefully it will, and we move forward and we say, you know, Litchfield Connect, those students are going to have the same curriculum, be taking the same benchmark tests and everything as the brick and mortar students. There's not going to be a difference and exceptions made for online learning. There's not going to be any of this no grades or anything happening with this. It's going to look exactly the same, or as close as you can get. The measurements will look the same. So I could compare a child and what their opportunity to learn is at, let's say, Barbara Roby, to a child on the Litchfield Connect. Is that accurate?
Yeah. Even within the AOI, we have to specify exactly what curriculum we're going to be using for each grade level. So that's already built into the AOI. We have to say exactly what we're using, and we're going to use the exact same thing that that our brick and mortars are. As far as benchmark testing, what would happen is we would actually have students come in for all of the benchmark testing, come into a physical building to take that, you know, based on the security pieces of it, along with AZM2 as well. So all of that is built into that AOI application.
And I think that the genius in what we have going, what Ms. Combs put together, is a really
Tanya,
good
Elaine,
schedule.
do you guys have any comments or questions?
Just really quick, super impressed with how quick you put this together. As something I thought about a lot, about how we're going to manage this, you know, whatever it was we were going to decide to do on the online piece, and the work you guys put in. Just thank you for you know, putting a year's worth of work in a couple weeks. So just commend you on that.
President Clymer, can you hear Jason?
Yeah, I'd like to say the same, kind of following on. Great work putting stuff together. I think it's a wonderful alternative for those that if they decide that they want to go this direction. Laura, this goes specifically to you. I know that throughout you know, my history here at Litchfield, especially over the past fourth quarter, we have a lot of staff members that are wearing a lot of different hats. And you are getting ready to go from what was a tech coordinator to now the program coordinator of this digital online academy. So just want to make sure that you utilize and foster communication with the dedicated employees that we have, because I'm always calling out your name when it comes to specials employees, right? The specials teachers. And I know we have a lot of dedicated people that would love to kind of not pick up the slack, but be there as a greater support for you. I know we've got Katina McCain up in the Verrado area. We've got Merle Shields. They've been with us for years, and their dedication is really, twofold. It's they're there for the right reason, and they want to also help. So a teacher lead project, I know we've talked about that before, just making sure that that other element of what was once your responsibility is also being cared for as well, because this is a great program and I want to see that go as well. But using the people that we have, making sure that that happens.
And you are absolutely right. We have some amazing specials staff that I've gotten to work with this year, and that's something that will not stop.
Right.
I will continue to be their support and to pull them in. And you're absolutely right. There's so many people, just even from that committee that literally, we talked about this Monday, Tuesday, I reached out to these people and every single one of them agreed to come in, and we met that Friday. I mean,
That's
it
great.
happened that fast.
Yeah,
So
that's great. Well, then that way you don't have to worry so much. I mean, the whole point of the extra stipend for our specialist teachers was to put them all on the same framework, basically. And this way we can still make sure that that happens so everyone is appeased while you're still taking over a vital part of our other learning options. So thank you.
thank you.
All right. Well, obviously we're super impressed with all the work that has been done. Jason, I want to give you an opportunity to say any last thoughts as well, or anything that you want to say other than from us, thank you. This is your summer break as a teacher, and you're using it to write a 20-page application in approximately 7 days. So, thank you for doing that. I know you guys put a lot of work into this, and I'm sure this will become, your pride and joy when it's all said and done, and the approval is in the bank. But anyway, do you have any other last comments or questions for us?
I hate to sound like I'm selling you guys on this, but this is really cool what's been put together here. It's really exciting. So everybody's kind of nervous, and it's kind of crazy the way it went down, but this is really exciting, and it could be, there's so many could be's and all this stuff, but it could be like a treasure for our district for a long time. By the time it plays out, I've been looking into learning management stuff, software for a long time, 2 or 3 years now. And what we've got going is really cool. And we hit the schedule that Laura put together hits that what the AOI is really asking for right on the head, as far as giving the kids structured learning and then also time on their own to do stuff. That's what makes online learning thrive, that combination. And we've got that. I think we really put something together in a very short amount of time that does what we're being asked to do, to put together a good program. And I think it can only get better if we've done it with, duct tape and glue now. If it does indeed grow, if it flourishes, we can continue to get better software and better stuff for the kids. But right now, considering how much time we had, it's pretty cool what we put together. So that's all I wanted to say on it. I think it's really exciting. And I know everybody's really nervous, but this could be a game changer. Education is probably never going to be the same, in my opinion. Just looking at the landscape, getting a lot of those middle school kids back into a structured classroom, I think there's going to be a good percentage that may never go back, and that just may be the new normal, for good or for bad. But I think that there's a lot that really could change out of this. So hopefully we're on the right side of history, and we just keep trying to do right. That's my thoughts.
Well, thank you very much. I couldn't agree more. Whether this is a good thing or a bad thing is still left to be known. Obviously, we don't know what the ramifications are going to be of going online and closing schools and coming back with different schedules all around. Yeah, it is challenging, but I think, as we've said here today, I think we're all excited and eager to see how we can support our students this year doing this. And if this program grows, and if this becomes, truly this 17th school and 17th program that we have here at Litchfield, that would be fantastic. And it would be another way that we can service our students and our staff that choose to, sort of partake in this educational model. And if it doesn't, and, a couple of years down the road, we decide that this was, really just a bridge to get us back to maybe a traditional learning environment, I think I would be okay with that too. I mean, the software, all of the pieces, all of the learning that you guys are doing right now will be useful to us down the road, whether we just integrate more technology into our classroom in the physical building, or if we lean more to going online. All of that learning is going to be important for you guys as teachers and for us as, governing board members, figuring out how in the world our district is going to continue to thrive the way that it has before. So anyway, thank you very much. Megan, did you have any last comments for us?
I'm good. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Hold on, we need to turn the volume up. We're having a hard time hearing some of you.
Yeah, I was thinking, no, I was just speaking up because I could hear Jason before he wanted to share. So nope, I'm good. Jason and Laura, awesome job.
Oh, okay, perfect. We always love hearing your opinion, Megan. So please don't feel like you can't speak. You can jump right in. Okay, fantastic. If there's no more questions or comments, I will make a motion to approve the request to submit the AOI application and statement of assurances. Second, Melissa, thank you. I'm comfortable just doing all, we don't have to do it individually. Okay. Any other last comments, questions? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Make sure to do your voting on board docs if you're able to. All right. Laura, Jason, thank you very much. We really appreciate it. Laura, enjoy Yellowstone. Get back to your vacation. You actually are allowed to have a summer break, so please go enjoy it.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Okay, we're going to go back up to item 4A, the proposed expenditure budget 2021 with Wendy, and we will give her just a moment to jump on and
Can you hear me, Danielle?
reset. Yes, I can, Wendy.
Okay. All right. Thank you, President Clymer, members of the governing board, Superintendent Gunning. Tonight I have for you our proposed budget for the 21 school year. First, I want to go through just a couple of general requirements. The first is that we must propose the expenditure budget by July 5th. Once it has been approved, then we need to publish a budget summary along with a public hearing notice in the paper or with the Department of Education. And that posting needs to be up at least 10 days prior to the board meeting where we would adopt that budget. So tomorrow I will post what is approved on Department of Ed's webpage, and then our budget adoption will be at July 7th meeting. So you had attached a document that was the full budget along with all the worksheets, but I'm just going to go through a quick summary of all that information. If we look at our maintenance and operation budget for next year, we're looking at $80,507,358. It's about a $3 million increase, or about a 4% increase. For our 301 classroom site funds, $8,976,724. That's approximately a $360,000 decrease. So in the 20 year, the amount per student we were receiving was $434. And back in February and March, when we were planning for our budget, we were told that 1% of the governor's 20 by 20 plan was going to go into that fund. And so I had estimated that it would be $470 per student that we'd receive. With the pandemic, the Joint Legislative Budget Committee convened, and they estimate that the amount will only be $425 per student. So when I was anticipating a $36 increase, it actually is a $9 decrease. So with that, we also will monitor throughout the year, because this is the sales tax fund where the sales tax revenue goes into. So we'll monitor the balance through the year and the revenues to make sure we actually are receiving the $425. Again, that's just their estimate. It could be less than that. So throughout the year, we'll just be monitoring the payments out of those funds.
Wendy, before you go on, I'm sorry. Got feedback here. Explain to me again, what's the 434 per student? You said you estimated at 470
So
and
the
it's actually
fourth,
going to come back at 425. I'm
Yes,
sorry,
so
go
the-
back to the 434 per student. And what was that figure for?
so the 434 was what we were receiving for fiscal year 2020 year.
1920. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, for our capital budget, I'm estimating our proposed budget to be $16,051,277. That's about a $399,000 decrease. And that just has to do with the amount of expenditures that we had in the 1920 year. We purchased more technology and also the curriculums. Adjacent ways is the funds that we levy to build ingress and egresses to schools, bus loops, and fire lanes. So what I'm proposing is that we would levy $600,000 next year. And that would be for our white tanks facility that we plan to start designing and constructing. Last year, the amount was 0. And I estimate the taxes for that to be $6 for every $100,000 of a home's assessed value. So if the assessed value of someone's home was $200,000, it would be $12. And with that, we have to publish in a local paper and give a truth and taxation notice to let the taxpayers know we'll be levying that fund. So the next piece is our average daily membership. So remember, our maintenance and operation budget is based on what will be our current year average daily membership. So to come up with the amount, the 10,662, I started with our 100th day number for the 1920 year, the 10,879, and subtracted out our 8th graders, and then added in our new kinder class. And doing that, I was still down about 400 students, and I added in 218 students for the areas that are growing. We had projected the number of students we anticipate to come in. So while it is down some, it is still based on our current students coming back. So if we go on to tax rates, I anticipate that the tax rate will be about $3.52 for the current year. Last year it was $3.67, which is a 15-cent decrease. The majority of that is related to our debt service payments on our bonds to our investors. The payments for that is going down due to how we had the payments scheduled. One item I'd like to discuss is the school allocations. So we allocate funding for M&O and capital to each of the schools based on their average daily membership. During the recession years, we had reduced this to $25 for M&O and $5 for capital. And it had remained at those levels until last year when we increased those. So my recommendation is there is a possibility that we will be declining in students. So my recommendation is to start making small adjustments. And so I would recommend that we drop those down to the $25 and $5. Do you have any questions?
I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
So my first question is, can you repeat what you said about the adjacent ways and the plan for white tanks?
Okay. So adjacent ways is funds that we levy on local taxpayers to pay for items such as the ingress and egress, so the entrance, the road going into the school, fire lanes, bus loops. Those are the items that we can levy a tax for. So what I'd like to do is levy $600,000 for our 2021 school year, and the majority of that would be for white tanks. We are planning to design a new facility for white tanks, and so that would be part of the construction costs.
Okay, and has that project been presented to the board or approved by the board? I mean, I just trying to make sure everyone's on the same page here.
I know that you have approved going out for an architect. And I believe we're still in the evaluation phase of hiring someone. So you did approve to go out for an architect.
Okay, so that was part of the bond is what, that was part of the plan for the bond. When the bond that was previously approved was approved, white tanks and a new facility there was part of that?
Yes.
Okay. My second question is, when we're talking about reducing the school allocations, what other areas would you potentially recommend for potential reduction or areas to watch out for that would be impacted greatly by a recession and a decrease in funding?
So since approximately 90% of our budget is in salary and benefits, we would look at saving as much as we can on supplies, not just at the schools, but in the departments also. Look at our contracted services, try to control our contracted sub costs. And then as a last resort, we would start looking at employees.
So my question with supplies, so right now you're saying we're going to recommend lower amounts, but if the funding ends up coming through higher than we expect, we will go ahead and give that money to the school. So my concern with that is that those supplies, I want to make sure that the teachers and the students have the supplies they need. So at the $25 and the $5, will they have what they need to be effective, or do they need more than that?
So each school spends their funds differently. Some of them end up using it more for capital items, or in last year, they had planned to do a lot of conscious discipline training, which that was canceled. So it's a variety of what schools use that funds for. Some of them have Title I monies or other donations. I mean, for the last, 7 or 8 years, that is the amount that they had.
And Wendy, I'll chime in. Since the conscious discipline was canceled, they had a very short period of time to utilize those ending funds. So they used it for supplies. So the majority of it, they stocked up on all their supplies at the end of the year with those extra funds. So rolling into next year, they're setting pretty good already with supplies.
Okay.
I have a question, Wendy. Going back up to the top. So we talked about our average daily membership potentially, being reduced. Obviously, there's a lot of unknowns with the calculations and online school and all of that kind of stuff. But anyway, just going based on the numbers you have here, everything seems to be going in the negative direction. Unfortunately, that is what it is. However, our M&O budget is still higher. So explain to me how we have more money, but we're actually getting less funding. Where is the remainder of that money coming from in the M&O budget?
So the state did do an inflation factor of 1.77, I believe it was. So there was additional funding by the state level. And then also the governor's funds for the 20 by 20, around 4% of the funds for the teacher increases went into M&O.
Okay. I'm confused about that. I thought that was, help me understand. I thought that money was actually coming through 301 funds now this year instead of M&O. Am
So
I
remember-
confusing those two things?
Part of
So
it. So remember,
okay.
it was 5% and about 3 point something, I want to say 3.75 is in M&O, and then the 1.25 is in 301.
Okay.
So there's a piece in 301
Okay.
and not just all, otherwise that M&O would be even higher.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. Thank you, Wendy. That makes sense. I understand. Anyone else have any questions, comments for Wendy?
I think I just have a quick question. I know, Wendy, that you mentioned something about trying to put a number on the returning back to school or the COVID you mentioned. So we get information and emails all the time from national board associations. And one of the articles was the $1.8 million that the average school district can expect to take on with social distancing. Am I assuming correctly that this is our budget right now, but we have a budget possibility if we have social distancing requirements, and then we have a budgeting possibility if we have to delay school, or we have another budget possibility where the online school comes into play? Is that all kind of wrapped up into the same thing? Are we pulling that, if it ends up being 1 out, are we pulling out of rainy day? Since obviously we're having an increase on M&O, how much do we have in the rainy day? I'm just curious about those 4 questions, all in one question. Sorry.
That's okay. So our budget is based on the number of students, the state formula, and also the number of miles that we're transporting kids. So
Right.
it doesn't really matter which scenario we use.
They're all
Other
gonna
than
be
if
the
we
same
do
amount.
online, we would be funded a little bit lower for those online students. So the overall budget amount is mainly impacted about if the students are not returning. That's where that impact's going to come from.
So if we go back to school and we have the social distancing issue and it's an increase of about 1.8 figuratively, based on this article, are we pulling that money out of rainy day? Would we have to do that? Is that where that money would come from if we had to use it?
We have CARES
Is
funding.
that a good question or is that a bad question?
So we have CARES funding through the federal government, which will be around 780,000. So that money is going to be used to pay for some of the PP&E, some of the training, the costs of reopening school.
Okay.
So we'll be using that fund for some of those costs, and anything else would either be savings in other areas or staffing changes to recoup any funds, or rainy day. I mean, there's a couple different levels there.
That we could pull from, okay.
Yes.
How much do we currently have in our rainy day fund? It's probably on there and I didn't see it
I
inside the big thing.
didn't do that one this time.
A rough estimate is fine.
I think it was around 12 million.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, Wendy.
You're welcome.
And just to reiterate, I completely understand. I mean, the CARES money, I mean, 780,000, wow, that sounds like a whole lot of money. I think we all know that we could have twice as much. To your point, I mean, there's lots of budgeting estimates out in the media right now, whether it's local, statewide, or national, that is saying there is not enough money, right? I mean, and there's no funding that would be appropriate, right, from the government that's going to make us whole. So yes, I think you're right. There's going to have to be, whether it's other decisions other than these cuts, you know, hoping to protect staffing as much as we possibly can, but using some of those additional funds, that I think it's just going to be a reality, unfortunately, moving forward. We know we don't have enough funding, and hoping that we can make do with, you know, what we're given as much as possible. Okay, thank you, Wendy, very much. If there's no other questions, Tanya, are you good? Yeah. No questions? Okay. I will entertain a motion. We need to either approve or not approve the proposed budget, expenditure budget for 2021.
I move to approve the proposed expenditure budget 2020-2021 as presented.
I second.
Any last minute questions, comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Wendy. Moving on to, still with you, Wendy, the 2021 Performance Award Plan review.
All right, so presented tonight, we have our performance award plan. What this is it's a summary of all the other decisions that we've made through the spring related to our placement charts and the increases for the employees, and especially related to our performance award. So this document was developed back in 2006 when we had our performance audit by the Auditor General. They just asked us to summarize and pull all that information into one document to make it easier for employees to read. So we recommend that we maintain the current levels for the performance plan. And then throughout the year, as we monitor our budget, this would be one of the places we'd have an opportunity to reduce the amounts.
Okay, I have some questions. Does anyone else want to
You go
chime
first.
in? Questions? No? Okay, so I'm 301 is complicated. It's going to get even more complicated with sort of people tucking little things into there along the way, trying to still maintain promises, but not actually maintaining promises in terms of salary increases. So it's going to be challenging. But my question here and sort of my hesitation is why we, based on the budget, the expenditure budget we just approved, we know that 301 money is going down. Why would we continue to have the same amount next year? Would we approve an award plan for next year that we are fairly confident we can't meet?
So I met with our attorney to discuss that. And since we had approved the amounts on the placement charts, she recommends that we move forward with those and then monitor the revenues that come in. And if there's not adequate funding, at that point, we would be able to cut those. But she felt at this point, since we had already approved those, that we could not reduce them.
I'm sorry, when you said she, who were you referring to?
Our attorney.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that part of it. Okay, so if they are already approved, what is the purpose of approving them tonight?
So it is to have this document that wraps all the different pieces together. So it's pulling information from our placement charts, from our handbook, and from our evaluations, and pulling all of that into one document.
So it's not approved as it is written here. Is that what I'm understanding?
Each of the components have been approved in other documents throughout the spring, but this is just bringing them all together.
So we're just approving a document. We're not approving any numbers. Like, we've already done the approval. She just wants approval for this specific document that's been put together. That's my understanding. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm sorry, Danielle.
Go ahead.
Okay, so this concerns me because I don't understand how we got to this point. I guess I don't understand the timing of, and obviously we didn't know this was coming. So, you know, I'm certainly not blaming anyone. None of us are mind readers or fortune tellers. But I do feel hesitant to approve this document that's tying everything together. Do we have any flexibility? Because to Danielle's point, we know the funding isn't going to be what it is. So why do we continue on like everything is what we thought it was going to be when we know that it isn't?
So that was
Anyone can answer that.
okay. So in an effort to get contracts out early, we set amounts for our contracts in the placement charts before the Joint Legislative Budget Committee comes out with their estimate for the classroom site fund. So in my estimate, I had just added in the amount that the governor's funds were supposed to be going into there. So it was my best estimate at the time. We approved the information and the amounts, and based on our attorney's recommendation, we stay with those amounts until we get into next year. And if the revenues aren't there, then we would reduce those amounts.
Okay, so Wendy, I want you to know this is in no way a reflection on you. You do a fantastic job. I appreciate your estimates. Like I said, no one knew that this was coming. So this is certainly not a critique of your work. It's a critique of the process that now has us here as a board being forced to approve numbers that we don't think we can actually live up to. And that gives me discomfort. So my suggestion going forward would be, let's change that process so that we can be confident in our numbers. And if we know, yeah, and I know maybe this is how it's always been done, so that's how we do it. But I would just like to see what kind of flexibility we can have in order to make sure that we're making promises to our staff and employees that we can actually live up to, because it's going to be extremely disappointing, and no one on this board or otherwise is going to want to tell anyone that, yes, you did everything you should have to earn this performance award, but we don't have the money to give it to you.
Kim, can I just
Yeah.
jump on that? Would it behoove us to take the attendance portion of this document that states right underneath there, this section is currently under review and may change pending future governing board approval? Should we add that to the top portion of this with the performance pay and mention budget in there, or funding? So then that way, I mean, if we're saying here at the bottom of the attendance pay, oh, maybe we can, maybe we can't. But the fact that this document looks pretty cut and dry, that's the numbers we're looking at, will give some sort of flexibility for people to understand that there's a possibility we don't have the funding, that we can't meet this promise.
So
It's already in there, right?
right. So the attendance part, that's why we put that in there, because it has to be reviewed by the committee and then
Right
voted
down
on.
at the attendance part.
Right, and then voted on by the teachers. So then we'll be coming back to you in probably the August or September timeframe for you to approve what that looks like.
Based on budgeting.
Not based on necessarily on budgeting, but what it is. Like, is it PD hours versus attendance versus, you know what I mean? Like,
Okay.
what is the option? What the attorney wanted to be clear was that right now in the budget and based on what JBLC has committed to, as long as they commit to that based on our contracts of our teachers and what is already in the account, we have to uphold it. It's only until you're in a deficit or you can't meet it that then you have to
Then we
change.
can make the
So we
adjustments
can't
to it.
make the change anticipating, we have to make the change when it's like, we can't do it. Because right now, they're upholding their end, the deposits that are coming in are at the rate that they promised.
Mm.
So they haven't changed. So it's only if that changes, that they're not
then we can make
living
the
up to their
adjustment.
promise, and we can't do it, then we have to do something about
So
it.
this is just streamlining all of this information into one document,
Right.
that it's all visible at one shot.
From feedback from an audit from
Mhm,
years
right.
ago, to do. So I know it's complicated, and I know, to Kim's point, like, we never definitely anticipated. And so it is hard because you try to, over the, last 7 years that I've been kind of doing this, we try to get those contracts out earlier and earlier because you're competing with all of your neighboring districts on a teacher shortage. But then now we've definitely learned a hiccup or an issue that has kind of come forward. So we'll definitely have to look at the practice to see what can we do to still, honor our employees and get their commitment at a timely fashion, but also not commit to something that we can't uphold. So that maybe there's dollar amounts that we can't give them until later.
I think also the process itself. Again, I'm speaking without any experience here, but we're rushing to get contracts out for good reason, right? We want to be the first ones out to make sure our teachers know we want them back and that, we don't want them to go someplace else. Could we entertain an idea where they get a contract that do not have these numbers because we don't know them? It is a performance award. It's not, it is something separate. It's not, and say, this will be determined in August or whenever those numbers actually come out that we know. Again, I realize we're in an unprecedented time. So, it's worked until it doesn't work. And then all of a sudden we sort of have to rearrange the process. But yeah, I think, my biggest concern is not the document. It's not putting all the numbers in the same place. This is procedural, really. My worry is that if I am a teacher or a staff member that would participate in this and they're not listening to this lengthy conversation on this meeting, or they weren't on summer vacation, or they weren't here or whatever, and they go to look and they see that we've approved this for a second time during a pandemic, knowing full well that we are most likely not going to be able to pay them that amount. And then come June of next year and we're short, through no fault of our own, just the money wasn't there. I just want to make sure we're communicating, right, that this is changing. This is a liquid situation and we're fluid, and we know we are legally bound by these numbers because we approved them prior to knowing any of this was going to happen, but that there will absolutely be changes to this. There's no way that there won't be changes, because I mean, we know the attendance policy, we know all of that's going to change, because that wouldn't be a fair representation, obviously, next year. So anyway, just with that caveat, I'd love to at least look at how we make that approval process going forward, knowing that the next couple of years are going to be rocky, I think, for us in terms of funding. So,
And I would like to make sure that that is communicated clearly to the staff members who are impacted by this. I don't know the best method to make that happen, but I don't want for those folks who are not going to read these minutes or whatever to be surprised by the fact that there is a distinct possibility that the full funding may not be there this year. And if the recession were to continue, will definitely not be there next year.
We can absolutely do that. We have our career development committee provides the training every year annually for all of our teachers, and especially new teachers. So we can just ask them to put that into their training, which is in a PowerPoint that they deliver to the all staff. And they do it multiple times a year they meet. So.
perfect. Any other questions or comments for Wendy or Jody on the 2021 Performance Award Plan? Perfect. I just need a motion to either approve or not. Anyone?
I motion to approve the 2020-2021 Performance Award Plan as presented.
Okay. Second. Thank you, Tanya. Any last minute questions, comments? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Let's go. All right. Perfect. Next, we will go to item 5, which is our consent agenda. If there are not any items for question or comment or to be removed, I will move to approve the consent agenda items as presented. Thank you, Kim. Anyone want to pull anything off? Last minute questions? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Consent agenda is approved. Next is item 6A, Superintendent Year-End Update.
Okay. Just wanted to provide just some, kind of year-end information and just celebrations. We had a lot of the celebrations this year. A lot of great achievements, rolling out our, oh, here we go. It's like the PowerPoint and everything. Wow. You can go ahead and switch to the next slide. I wasn't expecting the PowerPoint. Sorry, I got all excited. In our student success, we wanted to increase our student engagement survey participation scores, and we went from 400, a little over 400 students to over 5,000 students. And even though our number, our score went down, we definitely wanted to take into consideration, like, this will be the 5,700 students. We'll compare that to next year because we anticipate having the same number. So it's kind of hard to compare those scores. Student achievement goals, of course, that was something that we were just like, I would have never dreamt in my entire career that I would have so many teachers and staff and schools missing the AZM2 and getting their scores, because they were super excited from all their hard work that they did. And they were really wanting those scores this year so that they could truly celebrate. We wanted to maintain our daily attendance, which we did so and actually did better. So wanted to maintain the 95%. We were at 96%. Decrease our students out of school suspension rates. So I know it's a little bit different because we stopped at, we're a quarter short, but still went down pretty substantially from 268 to 190. Social emotional health and well-being. This was, of course, something that was super important for us, and we wanted to increase those site-based services, and we did 12 schools. And so we have our last 4 that will be added in August. And with that partnership with Touchstone, we were also able to add the Touchstone crisis services, which unfortunately we had to utilize a few times this year. but it was priceless and we needed them and they were right there when we needed. We have 109 students that are receiving services through Touchstone, which is absolutely amazing. And we've continued on with our conscious discipline implementation, school assessments, determined our TITES, parent training, PD for all staff, and progress monitoring of the school implementation. With curriculum and program instruction, we started our walkthrough feedback form that we were able to give to every principal on our main initiative so that they had some concrete data after we would leave our walkthrough. We had our TA committee that Gina led to enhance the current programming, which came out of our strategic planning process, the feedback from our parents and that. And so she was able to lead that initiative, as well as we implemented Wonders in grades K2 and successfully approved for moving forward through grades 3 through 8. In our people component, we increased the employee engagement survey participation scores and our overall score. So our goal was to increase from 4.13 to 4.18. We actually came in at 4.15, so close. And we increased the participation by 112 people. Our top box though, so that's the ones that were extremely happy and satisfied, we increased from 42.9% of the staff to 45.74% of our staff. And when we look at our overall nationwide comparison, we are in the top districts in the nation for employee satisfaction. We wanted to maintain our high teacher retention. We dropped just a little bit. So we went from a 92% last year to a 90.4% this year. And that includes resignations and retirements. So we wanted to give you some concrete data. We had 60 this year. We had 48 last year, but still down from the 17-18 school year, which was 79, where we were at an 86% retention rate. We continued on with our recruitment pathways with our job fairs, but we were not able to actually conduct our Litchfield job fair due to the COVID. But we did also work with the Department of Ed on promoting our classified staff and gathering interest in classified moving into the certified realm, and 84 of our classified staff were interested in looking into that pathway. High participation rates in our professional development opportunity for staff. So that was something we really wanted to do. And that came out of our strategic planning process the previous year, was that teachers wanted outside PD so that they could grow their expertise. We were able to provide that with Wonders training for all of our K2, 72 teachers and leaders for Kagan this year. We provided special area training classes and opportunities for our special area teachers. And new teacher PD opportunities that were provided throughout the year. And we had 129 attendees in those opportunities. And then COVID hit and we had 28,404 hours completed in professional development. People continued. We wanted to continue our leadership development. That was very critical and very important, and something that was definitely a part of our strategic planning. Our principal mentorship program continued, and we're seeing, we are closing that gap from a new principal to a veteran principal. And it's very difficult to even say, and even hard for me sometimes when I'm counting on my fingers and I'm trying to send a celebration email to remember who's new and who has been here. So that is something that we're super proud about. Monthly PD for our leaders. We created the Impact the Outcome Committee, which created continued leadership. So it's leaders of our leaders, and they're providing the professional development for them. Data meetings were provided consistently for every single principal with Brian to analyze their school data and to set goals. This year was our first year to have a systematic rollout of their survey data, where their staff was involved in the process to be able to set goals from that, and continued the development of our future leaders. And it was the second year participation. Megan led this initiative of our aspiring principals, and we had 6 complete that program. And the beautiful thing about that program is that they actually had to set goals and set projects that would reach those goals that were aligned directly to our strategic plan and go back and implement them in their schools. And so it was really powerful to see what they led and what they were able to accomplish. We wanted to improve and maintain clear communication with employee input. So we worked tirelessly in aligning all of our agendas and all of the components directly to our strategic plan. And we met continuously with our superintendent's advisory committees as well as our career development committee. And that's over 51 people that we utilized to get input on different initiatives and different components and things that we were looking at. The TA committee and the surveys that they were able to provide and to get feedback on. And then we began our enhancement and improvement committee to begin to reflect and improve on our current practices with the committees that we have in place. And this committee is ongoing and will continue in August because they weren't able to finish it during our school closure. Sorry, I'm talking fast. I feel like it's late. Service, increase our parent survey mean score from 4.09 to 4.14, and the participation rate. Well, we blew that one out of the water. Our rate went up to 4.51, so of parent satisfaction out of 5, and our participation in the survey increased by 47. Leadership visibility in our schools and community was very important, and we were able to complete 315 school visits throughout the year. In addition, community outreach. I'm a part of the Microsoft Data Center Advisory Board, Pebble Creek, Rotary, Guppy MEC, EFRG, I know that's a lot of acronyms, Westside Impact Superintendent's Council, and I'll be the chair in 2021. Lady Leaders of Arizona, all of the city meetings that we participate in go on a ongoing basis. Our connections with our law enforcement across all of our cities and our Maricopa County, and continuous contact with our legislators. It's so nice because when anything new happens, a lot of them just text me. This is coming. This is what we're working on. And it's just awesome to have that continuous contact and that I can reach out of, okay, you all are working on this, right? This is something you are considering, please. And then the Phoenix Children's and the Department of Ed creating a trauma sensitive school group. That's something that I've been a part of for many years and always want to continue that work, as well as being a part of the DMB community life and continue to work with DMB and the growth and just the development out there. And then this year we were able to add in our district services survey, which was an internal customer service survey, which we were super excited about. We've never done that before. And we had a score of 4.35, which was really high. And so the goal there is to maintain that. Each of the departments had a systematic rollout with their department employees and set goals in those areas of how they can improve their customer service to their internal customers. We continued our Homeland Security site vulnerability assessments. All schools will be completed by the end of June. Ongoing crisis training, and we had blue boxes installed at every campus for our law enforcement agencies. Exit surveys. Always like to give feedback on our exit surveys. These are from our parents who leave us. We had 158 of those surveys that people were satisfied. They were just moving out of state, moving to another part of the valley, but they loved and raved about our district. We had 3 that were dissatisfied. We had 13 that didn't say anything. They just put their name at the top. And then we had 5 that were choosing homeschool, 6 that chose Great Hearts, 3 that chose Basis, 3 that chose Primavera, 2 that chose Legacy, 2 that chose Prenda, which is a newer one that I wasn't familiar with, but it's for youngers. And then 1 that chose Imagine, 1 that chose Arizona Virtual, 1 that chose Valor Academy of Math and Science, and 1 that chose North Valley Christian, and 1 that chose Trinity. Finance and resource, increase our stakeholder knowledge and understanding of school funding. So this was a goal. And I know a lot of times, I remember when I put this goal originally, everybody's like, what is question 11, Jody? But that was one that was on the employee engagement survey, and it was growing their knowledge on that we're a fiscally responsible district, and that they felt that I, as a leader, helped in that area. And so we wanted to increase that by 0.10, and we went from actually 3.75 to 3.87. Funding training opportunities, we provided ongoing training. I should say mainly Wendy provided. I filled in a few times on a few of them, but she is definitely the expert. And she provided those trainings to our Superintendent's Advisory Council, our career development, and our leaders. And then this year we added the roadshow, where we created enhanced communication and understanding opportunity for our staff with input and questions that we were able to provide to over 185 of our employees. consistently maintain all resources and facilities and projects. And this is where I have to definitely give a shout out to our facilities department and Dan on, it's pretty amazing when you look through all that he accomplished in 1 year. So Belen Soda opened on time and on budget. Litchfield Elementary remodel, we're in the final stages of that. The LESD demolition of the unusable building behind our DO is gone, and it looks beautiful with the fencing all up and all nice and clean. Wigwam Creek bus loop. Scott Libby, the gym, the curbing, the back bathrooms, the fencing, the sidewalks, the landscape paint, and fire damage was completed. And fuel tanks were removed to above ground, and we had no contamination in the ground for our in-ground ones. So it's perfect timing. And I think, is that it? Yeah. And that's it. Some other just quick updates. We are definitely anticipating this week. We are supposed to be hearing from the governor on updates from him. So we'll be giving you more information. He seems to be pretty favorable of a 3 p.m. So if you just watch around, like 3 p.m. time frame seems to be his hot time to be on the news and on air. So and hoping and in anticipation that we'll have some flexibility and guidance for next year as well. And then we're continuing to work on all the different options and all of the different detailed components of each of those options.
Any questions or comments for Jody? I know it was a lot of information, but any areas of question or comments or anything? No? Okay. Thank you, Jody. That was awesome. Lots of successes and celebrations. One thing I think that I'd like clarification on, I know you don't have this like in your back pocket, but just in the future, when we're talking about teacher retention, it was interesting to see that, we combine resignations with retirements. I mean, I think, holding you accountable for people that are resigning is one thing, but holding you accountable for people that have worked for 30 years and are no longer coming back is totally different, right? So, I mean, I'd love to at least see, maybe in certain years we have higher retirements than others. And so it might skew our numbers just a little bit. So it'd be interesting to see. I know in the years I've been doing this and we've actually been able to get together and celebrate, sometimes we have a very large group of folks. I know they're not all teachers, but anyway, I know we're really proud of our retirees, and I hate for us to look at our numbers as going down as a negative reflection when perhaps it isn't.
Right.
It's just, the resignations are what we're more concerned with. So anyway, thank you very much for that. We appreciate it. I am going to move at this time that we recess this special meeting and convene into our second executive session of the evening. And I just need a second, please. Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Great. Motion carries.